evening, everybody, and welcome to Mad Realms Vote to Kick. I'm your host, Jim, also known as Malthanis, and with me, I have a special guest coming to us live via satellite radio, Roy B., one of the
Hey guys,
founding members of the Talking Script podcast. How you doing, Roy?
I'm doing well.
Didn't float away.
No, we're still fighting it, but we're okay.
Okay, that's good. You know, if the water comes up, just let us know so we can.
Yeah, I'll have to leave early.
Yeah.
For everybody who doesn't know, I'm in North Carolina, so.
Yeah, he was pretty darn close to Florence. It was a little dicey there for a bit.
Yeah, Florida. Well, we also had what was the other one just came through? Michael.
Oh yeah, the one that came up through the Gulf.
Yeah, we just got hit by that one too.
Oh boy, yeah, that's probably going to be rolling its way up for storms from where I am. But before we get into talking about subscriptions in the gaming industry, let's talk about the results of the poll from last week, where me and Aaron talked about rating, and if you'll look at the pie chart here, the kicks have it. Granted, there were...
Thank God. Jesus, man. The gamer community is smartening up.
Well, to be fair, there was only 11 people that voted in the poll. So 6 to 5.
Hey, listen, at least you guys are pulling the smart people here.
Yes, the smart people. But yeah, we got 11 responses. The consensus of that was to kick rating, but all things considered, statistically speaking, that's still a 50-50 split. Yes, yes, I know, QED blasphemy from the keep side. That was my argument, but hey, it is what it is. So while I go ahead and delete the responses, and I have to reformat the whole Goram poll while we do this.
Good, I'm going to eat.
Well, yeah, that's a good thing to do. Roy, you were the one who actually suggested subscriptions. Do you have any particular reason you wanted to?
I hate them as a consumer. It's just consumers give up so many rights to subscriptions, and as a business major, one of the things that my finance teachers and economic professors always said was, if you're a business, get people hooked on a subscription model because you'll just soak the money out of them. And it's just the way it is. If you look at how much you would spend on a game that you have a one price buy and play compared to what you're going to spend monthly over a course of looking at, wow, some people are hooked into that now for 15 years.
That's true. Look at
the cost of what you spent, what they spent. And there's a whole lot of things that economically just don't make sense with it, that people, to me, they're just the myths of subscriptions.
Let's see if this works. The refresh, did it delete things?
Mm-hmm.
No, it didn't. Boop. No data. Okay, so now we're going to start by posting the poll in chat. So this is for subscriptions. So since I'm going to have to be arguing kick here, since Roy is very much against these, so I'm going to go ahead and put my vote in for keep. Good, it stayed blue this time. Thank the dark gods.
That was the other problem.
Yes, that was the other problem.
Where are you pulling your chat? Where are you pulling the chat from? You pulling it off of
Twitch.
Twitch. Okay.
Do you want me to just shoot it to you in Discord?
Yeah, I guess so. If you can do that, I kind of like if somebody's saying something, I don't mind jumping in on it, but I'm kind of blind.
Oh, well, then we can just
because I can't see the chat. So,
So
guys, if you got something to say, I got to rely on him to tell me.
I shot you the link to the YouTube channel now.
Let me see if I can do it. I don't have bandwidth, guys. This is part of the capitalistic problem of this country.
Well, whoa. like you said earlier, that is a whole nother can of worms to get into.
Oh, we can open up a mess of cans of worms here.
Oh, well, to be fair, whenever you submitted your recommendations for future vote to kicks, our submission form, which I will be posting later for those of you in chat, to offer your own recommendations for vote to kick topics.
Yeah.
Hashtag settle plug. Hey, Wispy. I was really looking forward to all the stuff you put up It's going to be.
See, I told you I got controversy all over the place with gaming.
We'll throw the link in chat for Wispy, just so they got it.
Yeah.
And then if you could always just pause or pop out the chat window on your end, and then
I'm just trying to get Discord.
But so since I've got everything all set up and we've got all the chat rolling, do you want to launch into more of your?
Well, if you want to go first, you got the pro side. We can either do it bit by bit, or I can blast a whole bunch of stuff, or whatever you want to do.
Well, you already went off of the bit that when you were doing the business major, you were talking about
Yeah, well, one of the first things to look at is expense of it on the again, it's all you got to realize. I'm taking the consumer side in this.
Yes.
To me, it's just the biggest ripoff that anybody can do to a consumer is to rent them something, whether it's an apartment, a car, or a game, because you gain no assets in that. Now, gaming's a little different, even though you own the game, quote unquote. Most of the time, you don't. The company retains the rights to all its stuff. So, right. In a way, you're paying $65 for something, but you still don't have as much right to it as you think you do.
Right. They can arbitrarily at any point in time just revoke your access to the game if they so choose, if it's set up to do that. Okay, so you've done your. We'll just go back and forth.
Go back and forth. That's fine.
So generally speaking, just like with rating, I'm going to come at this from a developer angle because one, I'm a developer, and two, the company side is going to be the one that's more heavily pro on things. And AFK, we'll get to that. I'll try and write up something on that, but that's more of a different tick for bag openers, because that's really a symptom of a whole nother problem. But for subscriptions, it is first and foremost a guaranteed revenue stream. One of the bigger problems with you don't worry, AFK, you it's actually a really good point, but subscriptions are a guaranteed revenue stream. You have, say, single player games. You release a single player game and there's no microtransactions, there's no monetization to it. It's just, here is a game. You have the initial buy-in, and you have to take all of that money and you have to stretch it to put out the next game. And then the next game, and then the next game, and then the next game, and then you have these spikes of money coming in, and then you have to ration it steadily. And then as things peter out, maybe you get to a little bit of crunch. So with a subscription, you have a steady flow that just, here is a guaranteed source of income on a monthly basis, which means that it makes it easier to allocate resources. It makes it easier to hire new people, or to know if you can hire new people. And it's stability. Subscriptions are stability for a company. So that's my first big point, Roy, if you want to go from there.
And again, I'm not denying that's the truth. That is the truth, and that's why developers and companies really like subscriptions. But the problem is, it weakens the individual's position as a consumer to that company. In your case of a single player game, if I really enjoy that game, I'll buy the second game. Okay? That means two things have occurred on the consumer side. I've been impressed by what the developers did, and I'm expecting them to do that again. Now, if you do that you can't generally the subscription side of it, you don't really have any incentive for the company to put out their next expansion. They're getting the money. Okay, so the pressure on the company is a lot less, which means they slow down. They try to stretch out that subscription till people are really dead tired of the game, and then they freshen it up. Okay, whereas crap. Sorry, guys. Whereas with a single player game, take Elite Dangerous. It's not a single player game, it's multiplayer, but they're not on a subscription basis. They have to provide upgrades to that game and updates to that game to keep it alive. If they don't, that game's just gonna fade off and die. And really, to die, it just means that they go on to maintenance. So, because the costs of running that game are very slight relative to a full MMO. So for them, it's publish or die. And that extra money coming from Elite goes to pay, start other games and that sort of thing. Yeah. I heard Guido on the other side, Deo.
Oh boy. Now I will admit, and there's a fundamental difference in the discussion here. You are saying that basically from your arguments, you're coming from the perspective that the company will do whatever they can to squeeze as much money out of a consumer as possible.
Absolutely. That's their job.
Right. And that's a whole nother bag of worms with a capitalism model being amoral, where the only right is more profit. But again, bag of worms.
No, I'm not going to go into that good or bad, but that is exactly what a company's job is.
Right.
Is to get more money out of whoever their consumer is.
And generally speaking, when I say it is a guaranteed revenue source, as a developer, my own personal code of ethics is an in good faith kind of thing. Like, I will, if I were developing a game right now, I would be doing my damnedest to be putting out content at as good of a pace as I could, just because I want to make a game.
Well, yeah, but that's you got to realize you're
Right.
you're the developer at that level.
I'm not the marketing team. I'm not the CEOs.
You're not the CEO. The CEO's whole goal is what is the minimum I can do to generate the most amount of profit?
Right.
And if a company needs to make more profit, they'll speed up their development on game A, particularly if they want to make game B, which is a completely unrelated franchise. So if in the case of, again, Elite, they put out two new games off the back of Elite, and that was just on the initial 2 offerings and microtransactions at this point. Because I think they've only produced 2 paid content levels. One was the original game, and then they did the next one. I was selling.
Oh God, I played advertisements. I played MMORPGs.
They are, not to put too fine a point on it, but Elite Dangerous, again, I'm kind of stuck on that game, but Elite is actually set up to allow that to happen within the game. They do have 3D billboards in the game that are changeable on the server. Right now, it's all in-game advertising, but I could foresee a time when McDonald's has a billboard in the game.
I will admit that's a far more integrated form of advertisement, but I've played some older free-to-play MMORPGs that were East Asian, released in the US, and it was just a giant 1-inch thick banner ad across the top.
See, that's just no. But sub-free games have issues. I'm not going to, they have to make money. They have to make a profit. My thing with a sub-free game though is, if you do a sub-free game that doesn't have microtransactions, take microtransactions out from it, then all the pressure is on the developer to come up with a game that they can sell and sell and sell again. And my feedback in those cases is way more important than somebody who has a sub. Because what I say has to go in that game, or I'm not going to buy that game. A sub, you don't really have that much say. Oh yeah, we'll get to it. It's coming. Someday, soon, TM. It's a good idea. We'll think about it. If you have critical mass on a non-sub game, with the players, that stuff is going to go in that game. Look at No Man's Sky. I mean, one of the worst. One of the worst releases of a game ever. But as of the last update, it is getting nothing but kudos from even the people who were pissed off at the first release. Yeah. Because they've added so much stuff into that game that people wanted. Now, it might not be exactly what they wanted, but devs have a right to interpret and put in the game what they think will work better than what the people, the users want. But you have multiplayer in it now that you didn't before. You've got God, I don't know. This was such a huge update. It's gone so crazy with what they've added.
I kind of have to, looking at what QED and Daya were saying in chat, a sub, honestly, I kind of tend to agree with them that it seems like they're more incentivized to keep your butt in the seats because of how stable that consistent revenue is, as opposed to banking on making sure that as wide an audience as possible loves the next big release.
Well, the thing, look at WoW. WoW doesn't want to keep you in the seat. I had forgotten they had done this, but WoW actually went through and made it. They paid you better experience if you got out of the game and came back at a later date.
I was unaware of that. Where's that coming from?
It was discussion on punishment and rewards. I just was watching on the internet. The first thing that Blizzard had done with WoW was they didn't want people playing for hour upon hour upon hour. So what they did was they started taking away experience.
Yes.
Okay. Well, they flipped that and made it into a reward where if you didn't play, you got higher and higher levels of experience.
Yeah, arrested XP.
Right. Okay. There we go.
Stopped in a town.
So again, that was the whole point of that was to disincentivize subscription players from playing. They do not want you to play. They just want you to pay. They want those servers with as few people on it as possible and as many people paying in as it can. And Taz, no, they're not really incentivized to keep as many customers involved and happy. They want people to be just enough involved to make sure they pay their subscription.
QED is not.
I thought I just looked real quick. That's not Taz. Sorry.
No, that's not.
But QED, I'm sorry. They're not incentivized. They're not incentivized to keep people playing. They're incentivized to get that money every month. And no, people don't just, I haven't seen the results, but when you have people that invest so much time into these games with subscriptions, they don't just stop their subscription.
Sunken cost fallacy.
Yeah, that's just a fallacy.
I will admit, it took the prospect of moving multiple characters to another server that got me to stop playing WoW, and that's still like a $20-$25 fee.
Yeah. In
order to transfer a character from one server to another. But that's at least for World of Warcraft. So this might only be a thing that affects longer running games.
Well, everything subscription. Go ahead.
Me finish this.
Yep.
Blizzard stopped releasing subscription data for active subscription data for World of Warcraft because at the end of even every raid cycle, halfway through the raid cycle, their subscription numbers would start plummeting. Like there's a graph that goes up all the way to the end of, I think it's Cataclysm, that was published to the front page of MMO Champion, and it peaks right at the top of Wrath of the Lich King, and there were very minor dips before that, but then from the end of Wrath of the Lich King, there was just steady bumps. Like every time from Cataclysm on that there was a release, there would be a very large bump for an expansion release, and then it would drop, and then there'd be another bump for raid release, and then it would drop.
And that has to do with again, getting back to economics. That's the difference between a startup business and a commodity business. Startup business has this great big peak at the very beginning, and what you're trying to do is get that peak as high as you can, and then once your product becomes a commodity, your level stays off. Your top level's off and stays at a certain level. Think about refrigerators. When they first came out, they sold millions of refrigerators because nobody had them. Once they became a commodity, everybody had one. Then their sales just leveled off and stayed just for replacement. Same thing happens with games. Any game that becomes hot gets this huge spike at the beginning, but you can't live on that curve. You've got to figure out how to commoditize your game. And what you're doing with a subscription is you're holding as many people in there as you possibly can, but the only incentive to add anything fresh is just to get that bump back up to as high as you can get it. So what you do is you ride that curve down until you get to your point where, that's why about 18 to 20 months is what WoW used to, I don't know if it is now, but WoW used to do their update, because that was about the point where their subscriptions got where it wasn't nonprofit or non-profitable, but they got down to a level where they wanted to not go below that profit level. So they would plan 18 months out, boom, we get that new product out, and then we get a bump and it drops down. And you get into that cycle of, maintenance.
And QED also has a point, is bringing up that rested XP. That's been in for a large portion of World of Warcraft. That games aren't treated like that anymore. Like I remember stories from people I knew who played classic World of Warcraft with week-long Alterac Valley battleground maps, where there would be 3 shifts of people doing all of the PvP. That isn't so much a thing anymore.
Well, here's a question to ask: what are the other subscription games out of there? I go to WoW because that's the one I really refuse to play. I've never even stepped foot in the game.
WoW has a sub. Final Fantasy 14 has a sub. I think the only other EVE Online, I believe, is still subscription only.
No, so EVE Online is kind of like a conglomeration. You can actually play enough in EVE Online to pay for.
You can technically do that in World of Warcraft as well. They have in-game tokens. It's like Plex in EVE Online.
But, okay, gotcha.
But you still have to have a startup initiative, and then you basically have a certain amount of busy work in order to pay for your subscription going forward.
Right.
And then I think all of the other ones I can think of are like Rift, but that the subscription is optional.
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing. If you really look at how many subs are out there, and I really think it's just that Blizzard really just kind of, blew the sub model out of the water because it was so punitive.
Yeah. Hang on, Wispy. I think the games is trying to make itself into something special apart from the always online requirement for MMOs. The need to fund other development of the product should be no different than any other industry. So for subs and games, I'd accept an argument for covering the costs for keeping servers online. All other dev costs should come from sales prices, shareholders, loans, as would be in every other industry. I could see that. It's one of those things where like server space is relatively cheap anymore.
Well, you see, server space to me is taken care of by microtransactions. I'm not really against microtransactions. I'm just against the abuse of them.
Yeah,
that's really like Guild Wars 2. To me, Guild Wars 2 is one of the better ones, except they still have freaking gambling. If they get rid of the boxes, I have no problem with the model.
Now, I will admit there are some subscription models, like for example, Adobe's Creative Cloud system. It is $60 a month. It comes out to $600 or $700 a year.
Right.
But I know that an individual part of Adobe's Creative Suite used to be $600 for an.
Well, I paid $1,100 for Photoshop and
for the student version, not the official version.
Yeah, for the student version.
Yeah, the official version of Photoshop when I bought it came with I can't think of their vector drawing program, but it was both of them. It was $1,100. I don't have a problem paying $700 for that. That took me a while to get my head wrapped around.
Yeah,
that took me a while because I The only thing I really felt that they deserved the money on a subscription basis like that, where was an antivirus program, and you were upgrading those so often back in the day, anyways, that it was easier.
Now that's the thing is Whisper brings up software as a service models. That's what this is. The thing is, I guess the comparison there is you have to look at, say, a single player game that has anywhere from 12 to 60 plus hours sitting at the standard MSRP of around $60 for a AAA company's game. But then you look at, say, basically, I think the standard subscription fee for a lot of MMOs is $15 a month, give or take. I know World of Warcraft's had that forever. I think that was EVE's subscription. I'm not 100%.
Yeah, 15 a month is about what they were.
Right. So you figure that's 4 months of gameplay in an MMO versus a single brand new game. Now,
well, the thing is, you've adjusted your acceptability of a 60-hour game.
Well, I'm saying anywhere from 12 to 60.
Yeah, but the thing is, if you go back and you look at Half-Life when it first came out, that was a 120 to 150 hour game for $30.
Yes, there are outliers. Yes, and then there's stuff like.
Well, I mean, no, at the time, they weren't the outlier. That was the standard. I mean, you had Unreal Tournament, or not Unreal Tournament. I'm sorry, Unreal. I don't think I've ever finished Doom. If you look at all the games back in the late 90s, early aughts, that was, you were expecting 100 plus hours of gameplay out of those games. The problem came in when the consoles came in, and the consoles could only fit 20 to 40 hours worth of gameplay on a disc. And then the whole industry said, well, hell, if they can make 65 doing 20 to 40, why are we busting our ass doing 120 hours?
Yeah.
And so that part of the value decreased, and then WoW came out, and they had everybody say, "Well, we don't even have to be anything that great anymore. We've just got to be able to convince people to give us our money for month after month after month."
I think this is also one of those things where we're getting into the perception of value discussion that we had when the mount tickets for Guild Wars 2 came out a while ago. Because if you can put even up to the 100 and let's say 200 hours into an MMO in 4 months, which I think we all know that can be done fairly easily.
But here's the thing. Take a second. We're saying, and I agree. Hey, I've got my $3,000 in Guild Wars 2. I'm with you. But the thing is, how much of that was really content?
Fair. Oh, well, that's the thing.
How much of that was just hanging out with friends doing stuff over and over and over and over again?
That's the thing where the perception of value becomes, because then you've got MMORPGs, and because basically all subscription service games are MMOs of some type.
Right.
Part of the value there is the people you spend time with, and that's harder to quantify than a single.
No, it's not. I mean, my thing, and that's kind of the point, is that's not any gameplay that the devs have given us. That's not any work that the devs have done. All they've done is given us a playground to play in.
You're right. However, there are a lot of experiences that I've had that I wouldn't have without the game existing in the first place. I have met you, Dale.
Oh no,
everybody. I wouldn't be totally in any of this position for that.
Value is there, but we created that value.
Yes.
Okay, that's not something that the game created. That's not something the devs created. The devs make the pixels on the screen.
Well, see, that's the thing. I think that's the thing is we're getting from talking about absolute value of a product versus perception of value from a consumer point.
Well, that's my point. As a consumer, we are not getting our value, and one of the biggest ripoffs to a consumer in the value arena is a subscription, because there is no way a developer has ever. Okay, we figured this out. It was $2,700 if you played from day one until now in WoW, right?
I believe so. That was 2 weeks ago. I'd have to.
Yeah, but I mean, roughly, if I remember my math, it was like $2,700. Don't hold me to it, but now if you think that the devs gave you $2,700 in game value, that's where you're completely wrong, in my opinion. What they gave you was probably $900 of value, and the rest of it was brought to the game by you and making friends and doing stuff that way. Like I said, it's like a, think of a campground. Okay, campground, they lay out maybe 10 grand to make a campground, but they'll make hundreds of thousands of dollars off that campground because they only put 10 grand out, because they provided a place for you to go. The value in the campground isn't that the campground is there. It's what you did while you were in the campground with your friends and stuff like that.
I kind of also, I agree with that, because I understand that, that's, again, from a corporate, hold on, let me finish. From a corporation,
I do agree with you on that.
Oh, you agree? Yeah, because a lot of MMOs are designed with social aspects in the first place. So at the very least, they do intend for that extra, let's see, you said 900 is the physical work put into the game. Yeah. At least some of that 1,800 remaining has to be allocated for them designing the social aspects of the game.
Well, I mean, you've got but it's so standard to have, well, and it's funny. Okay. It's so bog standard to have at least a chat, to have some guild functionality and all that in the game.
Right.
When it comes out. Elite Dangerous didn't have any of that.
I'd argue that that's a failing of Elite, but
we can argue that, but the thing is, they still got people to pay the $65 and still be able to function using third-party tools to get the MMO experience. So to me, as a business, they actually did better than the MMOs did, because they didn't have to go nearly as far as the MMO did to get the value added on that's in the game. It was actually, to me, that's just a waste of profit. They should never have put those in and let people just use third-party tools to get around that. But all that being said, Elite is putting it in within the next couple updates.
Well, my question there is, if you don't offer the tools for people to talk to each other in the first place, if you meet someone in-game and you can't communicate with them properly, how can you know where to talk to them outside of?
Oh, because you do like like I did. I sat there and I gave instructions to people how to start up, get onto either a chat service that I was paying for, or that somebody had available, or Discord came out and it was, they made all that other stuff moot.
Right. Here's the Discord GG link.
Yep. Boom. There you go. So again, the secondary market is picking up, and that's kind of the problem. The only thing that really the social aspects in any of these games is the chat links and the guild stuff, because voice never worked right in the game. Boom. I mean, I was just watching Rust. Rust is probably the closest thing you'll see to where that interaction and talking actually functions in some level of where the immediacy works.
I think Sea of Thieves has something similar.
It could be. I'd looked at that game, but I hadn't really played it.
So I guess it comes down to how much value do you put on the social aspect of MMORPGs when it comes to subscriptions? Now, I will admit, I do have to ask a question. Mm-hmm. What do you think of, because I brought up Rift before, what do you think of games that have an optional subscription?
Generally, what I found in those games is to not play with a subscription. It's too punitive to play because the grind is so heavy. So there is a punishment involved in the game in some way to make it easier and better to play with a subscription. And again, that's the manipulation of, and that's the other side of subscriptions that people don't realize. Gameplay itself is manipulated in all of these games, whether it's a single player, multiplayer, subscription, microtransaction game, to manipulate the consumer to spend money in some way, shape, or form.
Right, because I mean,
the purest system to prevent that is the single player system, where or even like Diablo 3 now is much better because it got away from the gameplay that started out to try to create a real money house.
Oh my God, the real money auction house. That's a whole nother can of worms.
But you see, it's all related because, Diablo 3 came out as a multiplayer game without a subscription. And what they were hoping to do is make money. Again, this is Blizzard. They were hoping to make money off of the transactions that they were going to capture that were happening on the gray market from the original Diablo. And that was how they were going to fund that game. And so what did they do? They made it extremely difficult to get any kind of decent drop. They made the grind on the original Diablo 3 was horrendous. I played probably 40 or 50 hours on that game and never got a drop.
I'll admit I played a little bit when it released, and I never really got too far into it until after they got rid of the real money auction house.
Yeah.
So.
And the whole thing is these are all, and I mean, it's all manipulating consumers. But again, I come back to the side of the consumer in that subscriptions, it shows the devs that we're interested and we want them to keep developing. Not really. They're just going to watch until the numbers drop off to a point. They're going to get a timing situation where the numbers drop down to a certain level of profit, and they're just going to put out another expansion. They could, you look at any of the expansions that WoW put out, and the amount of money they were making, and you can't tell me they could have made those expansions faster.
Well, I do remember at the peak in Wrath of the Lich King, they were at, I think, 15 million subscribers.
Yeah.
Which, pull up the calculator just to do. So that's 15 with 6 zeros times $15. That's $225 million a month.
Yeah. Now you tell me, do you think, honestly, that WoW is worth $250 a month? $250 million a month.
$225 million a month. Personally,
that's the value. You want to know what I think? If you're making that much profit, that's what the game should be based on. It's not my $25. If you're making $250 million a month, why don't you have $100 million release in every 3 months then?
Yeah, I will admit I think I don't know if this is more of a gray area or what. I think time investment availability is kind of a deal now, because you were talking about Rested XP earlier. That was honest, and I think I can't remember who brought it. Oh, QED brought it up as a boon to people who didn't have the time to play as much.
Absolutely,
so
yeah.
You'd park in a town, gain your Rested XP, and then you'd have a buff to. I remember multiple times I'd sit in a town, I'd play until my Rested XP was done, and I'd log off and go do something else, because that was a decent chunk of time. I'd spend just as much time sitting around playing a single player game.
Mm-hmm.
The other thing is now, like back then, people like I was talking about the week-long Alterac Valley PvP maps. People don't have that kind of time anymore. So
some people still have the time.
Some, but I think that market is much smaller than it used to be. You don't really have. Well,
now we're getting back into the rottenness of American economy, of the world economy, and all that. But that's basically what's happening. Is people are making less money, having to work more, and have less free time to do stuff. I'll give you that.
So
but at the same time, that doesn't mean a subscription is actually the best way to handle that problem.
Exactly. But the side effect is that I think that there is very little room for subscription model games in the game, and I realize I'm basically jumping ship to Kick, because this is the same thing that happened with the loot box episode, because it was just like I have one argument. I have one, and it's revenue to keep developing the game, and that's only because.
Do you feel like you keep coming to these with a knife and a knife to a gunfight?
Sometimes, especially the ones where I have to argue.
We love each other. Don't worry about it, guys.
But it's more because I come into it saying, guaranteed revenue stream, but I also have that hopeless optimism of running a business in good faith, of treating the customer like, they're an actual human rather than just
right. And that's
a source
you're
of cash.
You're the great low level person that they want down there.
Yeah.
The high level people aren't thinking that way. They're thinking, well, they are in a way, their whole thought is, if those people aren't happy, I'm not going to make as much money.
But
the problem you have is you don't have, once you have somebody on a rental agreement, you don't have to impress them every single month. Whereas if you have them on a single player game, a single pay game, you got to, every time you put another part of that game out, you got to re-impress your people. So you're never, everything in a subscription game is really about enough flash to bring people back and enough maintenance just to keep the numbers, running down the way you want them to. And Wispy, the thing that ArenaNet really did make Guild Wars 2 out to be a very different MMO. And that's why I bought it. A, it didn't have a subscription. B, it started off with fair microtransactions. And I liked a lot of the PvE lubricant that they put in there so people wouldn't, there's very little ways that you could grief or aggravate people. Everybody gets a share off the same node for whatever you're trying to farm. Everybody gets a reward for killing the big bad whatever. Whereas in WoW and a lot of these other games, if I hit that tree, nobody else could touch that tree for so many minutes.
They only just fixed that recently.
Yeah, I mean, and it's
6 months.
Well, and that's the thing. I think finally people are coming to the understanding that PvP friction is hurting a lot of games because, hey, I like PvP at a set level, but once it starts getting aggravating for me to do what I want to do on a certain time period I've got to do it, I can't deal with that interference.
AKA, imagine if you were a WW roamer and you're constantly getting wrecked by thieves who just pop out of nowhere, kill you in 2 seconds, and then go away. Imagine doing that when you're in the Silver Wastes.
Yeah, or you're trying to do something, Tequatl, that big dragon. If people could come in there and just start killing people, how aggravating that would be after you've been there for 45 minutes and you're just about ready to do something and a PvP team comes in and just starts ganking you.
Yep.
Yeah.
So you have a point there, but I think we're kind of losing a little bit of focus. So I think that's probably a good place to wrap up here. So thank you all very much for watching. I'm going to throw the link to the form for the vote one last time in the chat for anybody who came in before the end. Oh, no, that was copy, not paste.
And y'all better vote for me.
Roy is kick if you weren't sure about that. But I've been your host, Jim, also known as Malthanis. You can find me on Twitter at MalthanisMMO. You can also find me live on here at twitch.tv/MadRealms. That's 2 A's in the Mad. Every Wednesday, 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time for our show here, Vote to Kick. And then afterwards, we do some Guild Wars 2 ranked PvP shenanigans in Zero to Hero. You can find Royby over on Twitter, where he tweets sometimes at Royby62.
Yeah, just have a thick skin on Twitter.
Roy is not. Roy
I'm not specifically game oriented.
Yeah, Roy's a. You've got a friend in Wispy. Wispy voted kick, so there you go.
Yeah, anybody who wants, just my player name is Royby in Guild Wars 2. It's also Royby in
Elite Dangerous,
and it's also Royby in Steam. So just I'll friend anybody.
He will. And then if you try to troll him, it's not possible. He's yeah.
Please try.
Listen to that laugh. You just can't. Anyway, ladies and gentlemen, I hope you all have a fantastic evening. I will see you all later, and I hope to see you all for the next show. Good night, everybody.
Take care, guys.